Brigitte Bardot was born on September 28, 1934 at 1:15 a.m. in the Clinique de Bleuets, a maternity hospital on the Rue de la Raquette in Paris's 11th arrondissement, during one of those autumn nights when the city smells of wet leaves and roasted chestnuts. Her mother, Anne-Marie Musil, called Pilou by everyone who loved her, 21 years old, dark-haired, delicate, the daughter of a rich industrialist who made insurance company furniture, screamed so loudly that the nuns threatened to call the police. Her father, Louis Bardot, called Papa Bardot, or Coco, 37, heir to the Bardot factories that produced oxygen and acetylene for welders, stood outside smoking cigarette after cigarette, terrified that his wife might die. When the midwife finally emerged with the baby wrapped in a white towel, she announced, "It's a girl, and she's perfect." Pilou looked at the tiny creature, 3.2 kilograms, huge blue-green eyes, a mouth already shaped like a kiss, and said, "She looks like a little fawn." The name Brigitte was chosen because it sounded modern, Anne-Marie because it pleased the grandmothers. From the first hour everyone called her BB, because two initials were easier to shout across the huge apartment on the Place Violet in the 15th arrondissement where the family lived behind green shutters and velvet curtains. She grew up in a world of money and silence. The apartment had 7 rooms, parquet floors that creaked like old boats, and a balcony from which you could see the Eiffel Tower if you stood on tiptoe. Her little sister Marie-Jeanne, Mijanu, was born in 1938, just in time for the war. Paris fell in June 1940. The Bardots stayed, because Papa Bardot refused to abandon his factories. Brigitte learned early to recognize the sound of the air raid siren, to run to the cellar with her doll Toadie, to sleep fully dressed in case they had to flee. She also learned that beauty was power. German officers stopped in the street to stare at the little girl with the golden ponytail. French neighbors offered extra ration tickets just to watch her dance in the courtyard. At 7 she was already aware that her face could open doors and hearts. The war ended. The real education began. She was sent to the Institut de l'Assomption, a strict Catholic school run by nuns who beat her hands with a ruler when she forgot her catechism and forced her to wear a gray smock that hid her legs. She hated it. She spent classes drawing horses and dreaming of becoming a ballerina. At 8 she started dance lessons with Boris Nyasev, the Russian émigré who had taught Leslie Caron and Zizi Jeanmaire. He saw her stretch at the bar, legs endlessly long, neck like a swan, and said, "This child was born to be looked at." She danced 6 hours a day, toes bleeding inside her point shoes, back straight as a blade, because ballet was the only place where no one told her to smile. At 14 she was accepted into the Conservatoire National de Danse. The examiner Jean Schwartz wrote on her report, "Exceptional physical beauty, remarkable musicality, will go far if she learns discipline." Discipline was never her talent. At 15 she was already 1.70 m tall, thin as a reed, with a mouth that looked permanently half open, as if waiting for a kiss. Helene Lazareff, editor-in-chief of Elle magazine, saw her at a dance recital and put her on the cover of the May 8, 1950 issue wearing a white ballet tutu and an expression of pure provocation. The headline read, "Presenton's Brigitte Bardot." France discovered her overnight. Letters arrived by the thousands. Men proposed marriage. Women copied her ponytail. She was 15 and already a national obsession. Roger Vadim saw the cover and decided he had to have her. He was 22, assistant to Marc Allegret. Dark, brilliant, dangerous. He met her at the Bardot apartment during a screen test for a film that never happened. She was wearing a red sweater 2 sizes too small. He was smoking a pipe and quoting Nietzsche. She later said, "I took one look at him and forgot how to breathe." He took her to the movies, to jazz clubs on the left bank, to the Seine at night where they kissed until dawn. Her parents were horrified. He was poor, half Jewish, already married, though separated. They locked her in her room. She escaped through the window and ran barefoot to his tiny flat on the Rue Saint Placide. They made love for the first time on December 21, 1950. She was 16, he was 22, and Paris outside was covered in snow. She bled on his sheets and laughed because it felt like freedom. They married on December 20, 1952 in a hurry because she was pregnant and had already tried to kill herself with sleeping pills when her parents threatened to disown her. The ceremony took place at the mairie of the 16th arrondissement. She wore a white lace dress and cried the whole time. 3 months later she miscarried. She never spoke of it again, but something inside her closed forever. Vadim made her a star. He wrote And God Created Woman in 1956 specifically for her, a story about a girl in Saint-Tropez who loves too much and too freely. They shot it in the summer of 1956 with a tiny budget and a crew that lived on pastis and hope. Brigitte ran barefoot through the streets of Saint-Tropez, danced the mambo on tables, made love to Jean-Louis Trintignant and Christian Marquand while Kurt Jürgens watched like a wounded bull. The film was scandalous. The American censor demanded 30 cuts. The Vatican put it on the index. French intellectuals called it the end of civilization. It became the biggest French box office success since the war and made Brigitte the most famous woman in the world at 22. She bought the Villa La Madrigue in Saint-Tropez, a white house hidden behind pine trees where the sea came right up to the terrace, and turned it into a fortress, a zoo, a sanctuary. She left Vadim in 1957 for Jean-Louis Trintignant, her co-star, who was married and doing his military service in Algeria. They lived a love story that tore them both apart. Secret meetings in hotel rooms, letters smuggled through military censors, nights when she drove to the Algerian boat in Marseille just to watch him disappear. He left his wife. She left Vadim. The press devoured them. In 1958 she tried to kill herself again, swallowing barbiturates on a beach in Italy. Trintignant found her in time. They separated anyway because love, for her, always had to hurt. She married Jacques Charrier in June 1959 because she was pregnant again and terrified of being alone. The wedding was a nightmare. Hundreds of photographers broke down the church doors in Louveciennes. She wore a pink gingham dress and cried through the entire ceremony. Nicholas was born on January 11, 1960 at 1:10 a.m. after a cesarean that almost killed her. She looked at the baby once and said, "Take him away, I don't want him." Postpartum depression swallowed her whole. She spent months in a clinic, refusing to see the child. When she finally came home, she handed Nicholas to the nanny and went back to work. She never forgave herself and never stopped punishing herself for it. The 1960s were madness and glory. She made 40 films in 10 years. La Vérité, 1960, with Sami Frey, where she shaved her head for a scene and won the Prix d'Interpretation at Venice. Vie Privée, 1962, directed by Louis Malle, a film so close to her life that she wept during filming. La Mépris, 1963, with Michel Piccoli and Fritz Lang, wearing only a red wig and a book as a fig leaf. Viva Maria. 1965, with Jean Moreau, two women blowing up South America in corsets and dynamite. She worked with Godard, Vadim again, Clouseau, Christian Jacques, Lelouch. She sang with Serge Gainsbourg, Bonnie and Clyde, Harley Davidson, Initials BB, recorded albums that sold millions, danced barefoot on television while France held its breath. She loved and destroyed men the way other women change handbags. After Charrier came Sami Frey, then Bob Zaguri, then Gunter Sachs, the German billionaire who married her in Las Vegas on July 14, 1966 after courting her from a helicopter dropping hundreds of roses on La Madrigue. The marriage lasted 3 years. She left him for Patrick Gillis, then for Laurent Verges, then for countless others whose names she forgot the next morning. She attempted suicide 4 times between 1960 and 1980, always with barbiturates, always found in time, always more famous afterward. At 39 she stopped. Her last film was L'Histoire Trace Bon et Trace Joyeuse de Collinat Trauchemise in 1973. She announced her retirement on television wearing a simple white shirt, hair tied back, eyes already somewhere else. She was tired of being looked at. She moved permanently to La Madrigue and to a farm called La Garriga near Saint-Tropez, surrounded by dogs, donkeys, goats, horses, any animal that had been abandoned or mistreated. She founded the Brigitte Bardot Foundation in 1986 and spent the rest of her life fighting for them with the same ferocity she once used to love men. She aged publicly and without mercy. The face that had launched 1,000 magazine covers became lined, swollen, sometimes unrecognizable. She spoke her mind and lost half her friends. Against immigration, against Islam, against modern France, for the National Front, for the seal hunt ban, for the right to die with dignity. She was condemned, insulted, adored, forgotten, rediscovered. She published memoirs that burned bridges, gave interviews that shocked the world, and never apologized for anything except abandoning Nicholas. She lives still, as of 2025, in La Madrigue, 91 years old, almost blind, unable to walk, refusing visitors except the animals and a handful of faithful friends. The gate is closed, The dogs bark at strangers. The sea continues to beat against the rocks the way it did when she was 20 and the most beautiful woman alive. Brigitte Bardot lived the life of 10 women in one body. She was the child locked in a golden cage, the teenager who chose desire over safety, the star who burned so brightly she set fire to everything around her, the mother who could not love her child because she barely loved herself, the woman who walked away from glory at the exact moment the world wanted more, and finally the old lady who found peace only among creatures that ask nothing except something to eat and a gentle hand. She gave cinema one of its eternal faces, music some of its most unforgettable songs, fashion the Bardot neckline, and the gingham dress, Saint Tropez its myth, and the animals their most ferocious defender. She also gave the world the most honest possible demonstration that beauty is a curse when it is the only thing people see. And somewhere, in the wind that blows across La Madrigue at night, you can still hear the laugh of a girl who once danced barefoot on a table while the whole world watched and learned, for one brief and perfect moment, what freedom looks like.